Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about the topic of moving from being a peer to being a manager, specifically of a manager of the group with which you were formerly a peer. And the reason I wanted to address this is because I have heard from people that it can be difficult to move into those roles and have a good experience. And it doesn't always mean that it's a negative experience, but it does sometimes have a rocky first start because people that you have formerly been a peer of, who you worked with on projects, who you were equal no matter what, now you're in a position of not superiority, but you're now in an elevated role so that you have more control over them. You have to manage their day to day. You are a little bit more in control of their career, and it can make people very, very uncomfortable. So I wanted to tackle that because it's something that I've been through, and I wanted to pass on some of my expertise in that area. So the first thing that we need to discuss is, and I think that is important to discuss, is being transparent with your team. From the beginning, you want to set the bar of how you are going to manage them. So the first thing that you're going to need to address is this new dynamic. It really behooves you to bring everyone into a room or a common Zoom call or something like that, in which you can communicate what you anticipate happening going forward, how you will be either changing some of the structure or how you anticipate working with them. And this really sets the tone for the rest of your engagement with them and their relationship. You need to be transparent. You need to address the fact that, yes, this is a shift for everyone. We all have to come to a new normal with what this is going to look like, especially if a manager has left and now you have stepped into their role. You're likely to have a different leadership style or a different way of working with the team because you have been part of the team. You know how it operates. You know the good, bad, and ugly and what you would do to improve that. So let's address that. And it's all like I think it's hugely important for you to be transparent with people, especially if you've had that relationship in a peer-to-peer situation. And you need to realize that now this dynamic has changed. You are not likely to have that same type of relationship that you had, the same type of camaraderie that you had before, because now you're going to have more information that they had before. You're going to be in control of their raises and things like that. And that comes with a little bit of separation of how people interact with each other. So it's naturally there, especially because everybody comes with a little bit of ego. So it might be difficult for them to trust you in the beginning. So get everybody together, explain the situation, explain how you expect to, lead them, how you're going to manage them, if there's any changes that you anticipate, and be open for criticism. So the next thing is, or not just criticism, but input. So the next thing is to keep that form of communication open. You always want to put your team first above anything else. It is your job as a manager to protect them, to insulate them from others, to allow them the bandwidth to do their job and do it well. So make sure that you're communicating with your team on a regular basis. Set up those cadence calls, or whatever is the program that how you're going to manage them in their work. You need to set that up pretty immediately so that they get used to that. And nobody likes change, so it's going to take them some time to get used to that. And don't feel like you have to do exactly what the previous manager did. You're going to have your own style, and it's okay for you to take a bit to grow into that. The other thing that you want to establish is you want to redefine boundaries. So you, like I mentioned, you had this relationship with your peers for a period of time. You already knew how to work with each other. Now that you are in a management role, you're going to have to redefine those boundaries. Like, you can't always, to be completely blunt, you can't talk about people the way that you did before, or your coworkers before, because anything that comes up like that, now as a manager, you're bound to report that if you hear anything that peers used to talk about. You also have to respect your other managers. You should conduct yourself in a way that is, now you have to close some of the ranks, because you can't have that same relationship that you had with your peers before, because you now have more information than they do, and you cannot get into talking about other people like you would if you did in the past. You also need to establish your own leadership identity by understanding how you're going to manage these individuals and taking away any preferential treatment that you gave people. If you had a bestie on the team or something like that, you can't treat them differently than you would the rest of your managers or the rest of your team, because you are going to alienate those other team members. And you can't allow the person that was your friend before to expect special privileges because now you're in a management role. That sometimes does happen, and you have to set those boundaries, and that identity right up front is that this is business first, and I can't give you preferential treatment. You can't get more hours off, you can't get more time off than the other person, you can't have, an easier workload. Those are just the things that you're going to have to establish, and you have to do that pretty much up front. You also will take some time to build up trust with the rest of your team, because the reality is, especially if you were promoted above someone else that was on the team vying for the same role, you're going to have to allow that person to trust you. They may take a while to get over their feelings about it. Everybody will react differently to this elevation. Who knows? Maybe they're all excited for you. They feel like, this is the right thing. But for those roles or those situations in which people are kind of hurt over it, you need to allow time for them to get over it, and at the same time build trust. So they eventually will come to terms with what the situation is, and you need to allow them to have those feelings in the space in which they feel them without interfering and saying that's not right, that's not how you should be feeling, this is what I'm trying to do. Just it's going to take some time to build up that trust with them. Again, that you are on their side, you are there to protect them, and you're there to insulate them and help them succeed. The next thing that you need to do as a manager is figure out how you can delegate some of the things that you have now on your plate. You are likely to have some of the same role as what you had before when you were a peer, and it's, as a manager, a lot of people want to continue doing that because they don't want to burden their team with those activities. But unless you're hiring someone into that role to replace you, some of the work that you were doing is going to have to be dispersed amongst the rest of your team. So look at what your list was. How are you going to parse that out? Give people equal opportunity to take on the activities or the projects that you were doing before, and make it equitable across the board, because that's how you start to build trust. You also want to foster with this team the essence of continuous learning. That's another way that you build up your team, is that now you are in a position that has been elevated above theirs. How do you make them successful? How do you pave the way for them also to be able to move up? And it's not always peer, from going from a peer to a manager. You may have different levels within your organization that people can move up. So if you put them on a growth plan where they can move up stages and, make a little bit more salary or get a bonus or something like that, or just have growth in their role so that either their responsibilities are expanded, they get a new title, or they get more salary or income, then you want to put them on that path early on and talk to them about what they see for themselves and how do you help facilitate that. That again goes back to building trust and making sure that your team is continuing to grow. With all of this said, the best thing that you can do also is lead with empathy. It is hugely important that you take into consideration how they are feeling in this situation. It may be something that, moving up from a peer to a manager, may be something that you wanted for a long time. You've worked your butt off to get there, and maybe others have as well. It was just you who got chosen for this role for any number of reasons. But they are likely to go through a period where they need to adjust to this. So leading with empathy allows them to feel what they feel, and you to eventually, once they get over that, to help them succeed. And so putting yourself in their shoes and how you would feel if the same thing happened to you is going to help you guide yourself through this situation. So I would love to hear about how any of you have managed this in your own company and how you got over it, or any tips that you may have for the audience. And I would love to hear that. And if you have any questions for me, please hit me at rosa.rosalier.com. I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.